Hey everybody, welcome to Board Game Heaven. My name's Raymond and I'm going to take a look at Claim and Claim 2 by Scott Almes with great illustrations by Mihajlo Dmitrievsky, published by White Goblin Games. And this is a two-player trick-taking game which plays in about half an hour, and there's two versions of this and both have 5 suits, and you can combine them to play with 3 or 4 players. So let's set up a game and I'll explain the rules and then I'll tell you what I think about it. A game of Claim consists of 52 cards and 5 factions. You get 14 goblins numbered 0 to 9 with 5 zeros, 10 dwarves, 10 undead, 10 doppelgangers, and 8 knights numbered from 2 to 9. All of those factions have special abilities which are explained on these reference cards. To play the game, you take all the cards, give them a good shuffle, and place them on a single pile in the middle of the table, and you deal each player 13 cards. Now we're ready to play. Let's explain the rules. In the first phase of the game, you simply take your 13 cards and you want to recruit followers. So the first phase consists of 13 tricks, one for each card in each player's hand. The leader for each trick is the player who won the last trick, or in the case of the first trick, the youngest player. And each trick is played by following these 3 steps. You first reveal one card, and that is the card you will be competing for. Then the leader plays any single card from his hand, and you can choose a card of any faction. It doesn't have to be a card of the faction that the players are competing for. So for example, he really wants to have that high knight card, so he plays this card. And the other player looks at his or her hand and sees if they have a better card or not. And then if the player plays a higher card of the same faction, they win that trick and the lower card loses. And if able, the other player must follow faction. So in this case, they only have the one undead here, which is a lower value, so they have to play that, and then this player wins the trick. That means that this player wins this card and puts it face down on his side, and these two get discarded. With the exception of the undead faction, in that case, these cards go to the winning player's score pile immediately. The loser of the trick takes the top card of the draw deck and places it face down in their follower deck. So then the next round starts, a card is flipped over, the winning player starts again with the first trick. So let's say this player is going to play this dwarf, and the other player can play this one. They have to follow suit. This is the higher card, so that player wins this card, and that card goes to his phase 2 pile, and this is discarded. So then that player has won the trick, flips over a new card, then decides if they want to win that card or not. And in this case, a low dwarf card might be handy because dwarves have this special ability that in the second phase of the game, the player losing a trick collects all dwarves played during this trick and adds them to their score pile. So that player is going to play a high card, and this player must follow suit. So he doesn't have anything higher than a 9, so he's just going to play a low card. That player claims this card, and these two get discarded. Now it's this player's turn again. Next card gets flipped over. That player is going to try and get that card as well. So this player now doesn't have any dwarves, so he can't follow suit. That means he can play any card they want, so he's going to get rid of a low card. These two get discarded. This player wins the trick. Oh, and I forgot that every time the winning player takes the trick card, the losing player takes the top card from the draw pile, ensuring that they have an equal number of cards. So this goes on for a while, so it's important to know what all these factions do. So the Goblin faction has no special power. The Knights, if played after a Goblin, automatically beats a Goblin regardless of its value. But the player must still follow faction if able. The played undead cards are not discarded in phase 1, but added to the trick winner's score pile, which we will build during your second phase basically. The dwarves in phase 2, the player losing a trick collects all dwarves played during this trick and adds them to their score pile, and the winner will still collect any non-dwarf cards that have been played. And the doppelganger faction is considered wild. You may play a doppelganger instead of the asked suit, even if you're able to follow suit. When played second, it is considered to be the same faction of the first card and is considered to be following faction. If a leader plays a doppelganger, then the other player must still follow a faction by playing another doppelganger if able, and a doppelganger does not take any special powers from the faction it follows. So at the end of phase 1, all players will have played their cards, and there are no more undead in here, so these would all eventually get discarded, and these would just be claimed, and I'll just deal them out randomly for now. So, and then every player has again 13 cards with which they are going to play phase 2. So it is really important to make sure you get cards that you can use in your second round. So if you can, try and get as high numbers as possible, or as low as possible when it's dwarves. And then in phase 2 you take those cards onto your hand, you don't show them to the other player, and you're not playing for any cards in the middle anymore, but you are playing for the cards that you have in your hands. So the leader can play a card, and then the other player must follow suit, so he's going to play a low card in this case. The leader takes those cards and puts them into his score pile. So this goes on for a while, the leader plays a card, follower plays a card, leader wins the suit. So he can do that again, draw out another low card, take those, and maybe he wants to play one of the dwarves, and this player then will play a high card. The lowest dwarf wins in this case, so he takes those, plays another card, but this time this player has a lower card, and then they will take, and then they can be the leader. So he's going to play a 9, for example, and he will play a 1. And this goes on until the end of the game. And when all cards have been played, then you tally up all the cards that you have, and then the person with the majority of factions wins the game. So in this case, for example, let's see how this plays out. Let's play an 8, he will play the 6. He's going to play a 7, he will play the 0. 6, followed by 2, he's going to play the 5, he can't follow suit, so he's going to play the highest dwarf, he can play again, another dwarf, and he'll play this, and that player wins a lot of tricks. So then you just put the cards on the table, and the other player looks at his cards, and it is clear that this player has the majority of, in this case, all the factions. But if this were the case, for example, then that player would have had the majority of goblins, this player would have had the majority of undead, dwarves and knights, and even doppelgangers, so that player wins the game. And if there is a tie when both players have the majority of an equal number of factions, then whoever has the highest single card of that faction wins the vote. And the player who wins the vote of at least 3 factions then wins the game. Claim 2 basically plays exactly the same. It only has 5 different factions with different abilities. So to go over them real quick, the gnomes, if you win a gnome in a trick in phase 2, you must place it face up in front of you instead of placing it into your score pile. At the end of the game, any gnomes still laying in front of you are placed into your score pile. If you win a trick in phase 2 with the giants, then each giant won in this trick may smash one opponent's gnome of the same value. Discard the smashed gnome. It won't be scored at the end of the game. Seers, if you win a trick in phase 1 while playing a seer, you may peek at the top card of the deck and decide whether you take the top card or the face-up card. If you take the top card, your opponent takes the face-up card, otherwise he'll get the top card as usual. Trolls in phase 2, players can only collect 1 troll into their score pile at a time. If 2 trolls are played, the winner of the trick only takes the higher value troll and leaves the other set aside for the winner of the next trick. If multiple tricks or trolls are played in a row, it is possible that multiple trolls can be set aside waiting to be taken. If there are multiple trolls, the winner will always take the highest value, even if that one was previously set aside and not played in the trick. When the final trick of the game is played, that player will take any troll cards. Then the dragons. The last player to play a dragon in a trick will be the leader for the next trick, regardless of its value or whether the player followed faction. The winner still takes the cards as usual. And if you own both Claim 1 and Claim 2, you can combine both sets to explore new combinations of factions and new interactions between factions. And for a two-player game, you select either the knights and the goblins and then 3 other factions, or the gnomes and the giants and 3 other factions. For 3 and 4 players, you also either get the knights and the goblins from Claim or the gnomes and giants from Claim 2, and then you pick 5 other factions. Then you shuffle all the cards, and then in a 3-player game you deal each player 12 cards, and in a 4-player game you deal each player 9 cards. In a 3-player game everybody plays for themselves, and in a 4-player game you play in partnership with another player, and then you sit diagonally from each other. And in phase 1 with a 3 or 4-player game, then the top 2 cards of the deck are revealed and placed face up in the middle of the table. And the player who wins the trick chooses the first card in the middle, and then the next player chooses the other card on the table, and any remaining player takes the top card of the deck. And then the third player would draw before any 4th player if you're playing a 4-player game. And then when the deck is depleted in phase 1, phase 2 commences like in the regular game, and phase 2 plays exactly the same. And in a 3-player game, the player who won most factions is the winner, with the same tiebreaker as in the 2-player game. And in a 4-player game, the players in each team combine their won cards, and the team who won the most factions is the winner. And that's how you play Claim. Let's go to my final thoughts. So my final thoughts on Claim and Claim 2. Well, let me start with the presentation. The illustrations by Mihailo Dimitrievski are amazing. They are really, really cool. I mean, I just love all of these. It's a very unique art style and I really enjoy it. It comes in a very compact little box, and if this isn't small enough for you, there is even a smaller tin can traveling version, Claim and Claim 2 Mini, or compact. I'm not sure how they named it, but it's even smaller and it comes with small square cards. So that's even more compact. But as it is, this is already nice and compact and will fit in any collection. And the rules are just one leaflet, and it comes in several languages. Well, the game itself is language independent, but you get these reference cards for all the different races and what they do, what their special abilities are, in several languages. And Claim 2 also comes with the rules, and on the back you get the rules for combining both games and making it a 3 or a 4-player game. So gameplay is also easy to explain, but it takes a bit of playing it to actually get how to play it, because as with any trick-taking game, you have to really cleverly play your cards and try to remember what has been played already. So that's quite challenging, and you never know what cards there are going to be. There are always going to be cards left in the deck, and you're trying to get that trick and add those cards to your hand, to your scoring pile. And I think it's really fun that during the first round, you're building your deck for the second round. So you're trying to get majorities in certain of these factions, so that you know if I have a majority in a faction, then I can keep playing that faction, and the other player probably won't have them, so I will be taking all of those tricks, unless some other card has a special ability that takes a trick away from you, so you have to keep that into account as well. So it's a very clever game, and since there's in total with these two combined 10 different factions that you can combine, there's a lot of things that you need to take into account. So your first couple of games might not go so well because you just didn't take into account what all the factions can do, but after a play or two, you'll know what they do if you start with just one of these two and you have just the 5 factions. And after you've played that for several times, then you can try the second one and learn that and then start combining. So all in all, I really enjoy playing this. I'm not a huge trick-taking fan because I'm usually not that good at them, but I did enjoy this one, and not just because of the art, but I do think it's very clever, and you have these reference cards, so you can look at them all the time and think, okay, this is going to happen with that faction, etc. So it's not that hard to remember everything. You just need to be alert and attentive to what you're playing, what the other player is playing. And I did manage to win several times, so it's not that bad. So again, really enjoyed this game, giving it a thumbs up. That's Claim and Claim 2 by White Goblin Games. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon to get notifications whenever I post a new video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Board Game Heaven.